Mithraism was a clandestine religion which preceded Christianity and was practiced in the Roman Empire from the 1st through the 4th centuries AD. The legacy of Mithra holds importance to the very core of secret religions and societies throughout Europe even today. Symbolic references to Mithraism appear in several institutions of spirituality and power, including Egyptian and Masonic temples, and even in the Vatican. This is Mithra, portrayed in this case as a lion-headed deity, a serpent coiling his torso. In this and other depictions, he has 4 wings, commonly portraying symbols representing the 4 seasons, oftentimes holding a key or 2, sometimes a scepter, sometimes a sword, and often atop a globe adorned with a diagonal cross. Mithra represents both time and the time process of the yugas. The lion-headed figure appears in a wide range of images from various periods in history. In this image from Manly Palmer Hall, he is depicted as a standing figure, coiled 7 times by a serpent. In his right hand are 7 stars arranged in a heptagon, and the 8th in the center. The serpent's head, above the lion head, encircles a key. He carries a sword, woven 3 times by the serpent. This gives us another example of the 3 to 7 relationship to the precession of the equinox. Finally, bowing before him are 3 figures representing the 3 durations of time: the past, the present, and the future. He seems to be emerging from a carved stone, a monolith, within a quarry of rock. This symbolizes that Mithra, a time deity, born from rock, is embedded in the processes of earth and in its most permanent form, the formation of stone. This image and myth of Mithra leads us into an understanding of Gnosticism. The source of the Gnostic belief system is still not fully known, but it seems to have emerged from somewhere in the Middle East, perhaps from the region of the Caucasus between the Black and Caspian Seas, and the Armenian Plateau in what is today northern Turkey. Many of the teachers in this region, who may have come from lineages which originated in Babylon, influenced the sudden philosophical surge and outgrowth that resulted in the explosion of knowledge and culture in Greece. This sudden explosion of knowledge cannot be explained in any natural way, eventually becoming one of the most influential schools of philosophical development, and maintains that influence even today. Gnosticism is associated with this very early story and to the growth of esoteric philosophy in recorded history. The Gnostics revered a female deity by the name of Sophia. Sophia is a feminine goddess who the Gnostics believed began as an energetic field emerging from the center of the galaxy. This particular energy field carried within it all the vibrational qualities necessary for the manifestation of embodied consciousness. It was said that Sophia was of a certain quality of energy that serves the All. The All, with all capital letters, is the original primary unity. And the All with lowercase letters is the creation of the universe in which everything comes out as separate parts. It's the same relationship of one as unity and one as units. As units, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on into infinity. This is the infinity of the unit, and this is the absolute, undefiled, undivided integrity of the totality. Sophia serves the All by reflecting back to it the beauty of its own creation. This is counter to the Greek and Judeo-Christian beliefs that mankind is made in the image of God. Through the Sophian myth, mankind is made as the mirror of God. This seemingly subtle difference between the mirror and the reflected image within the mirror is philosophically rather significant. Sophia is conceptually reminiscent of the beautiful wisdom of the Puranas. Whether we know it or not, all things come into existence through that which precedes it. The wisdom of Sophia infers that the whole creation of the All would not have a manifest existence unless it was reflected. Sophia makes the great sacrifice of being a universal field of energy, and she descends into the cosmos to begin a transformation into the Earth. We are not talking about the Earth as a particular sphere in a particular place in the spiraling galaxy, but rather the place process that allows consciousness to become manifest as form. The purpose that the Gnostics give to our existence, our origins, is that we must perceive and conceive with great accuracy the nature and profound characteristics of the All. Sophia began her transformation in Gnostic mythology. As the story goes, Sophia has within her the ability to create life, which she does with such profusion and force that life and life forms literally pour out of her. The elders, who govern all the forces that come from the center of this galaxy, saw that Sophia was in crisis. So they sent a force which could bring order and limitation and a permanent basis for the organization of her outpouring. This form came as a spiral, such as we see when we look at the seed pattern in a sunflower or in a pine cone. These patterns are arranged in a very precise order. You see it in every seed spiral of a sunflower or a rose or a lotus. They have 14 circles. That order, as we will see later, repeats over and over and over again in the relationships of the golden mean. That force that they sent to rescue Sophia, bringing in this process of formal organization, is called the Christos. This is the source myth of the name of Christ, the epithet that was acquired by Christianity. At the same time, a movement of Christianity set out to proclaim Gnosticism as a heresy, worthy of death. This became one of the many, though rarely discussed even today, genocidal periods that took place in Europe in the first few centuries of the Common Era. Normandy was an area of northern France occupied by the Normans, an ethnic group comprised of indigenous French and Norse Viking settlers as a result of decades of invasions on the French coast from Denmark, Norway, and Iceland. The Normans were some of the most skilled shipbuilders and sailors in European history. There is evidence of their influence as far away as North America, where it is believed that the Normans landed in Nova Scotia sometime in the 1300s and traveled south to what is today Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Cape Cod. Back in Europe, the Normans grew in power and influence. Coupled with influence from Persia and the Byzantine Empire, the Normans of southern France, as it is speculated, eventually formed the religious group known as the Cathars. The Cathars came under constant ridicule and contempt by the Church of England, and as a result formed yet another religious group known as the Puritans in the 16th and 17th centuries AD. The Puritans were, again, a seafaring bloodline, and in their attempt to purify the Church of England, were the first people to found permanent settlements in America. There are infamous stories of Norman bloodlines who played significant roles in the discovery and identification of otherwise unexplored corners of the globe. Many of these Normans traveled east and founded the Knights Templar at the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, and supposedly brought back the treasures from King Solomon's temple. In Scotland and England, there started the famous bloodline of the Sinclair family. Henry Sinclair, Earl of Orkney, was a great explorer and launched a series of sea expeditions, including to Nova Scotia. There is speculation that Henry Sinclair was also a Knight Templar, and that his voyage to the New World, nearly 100 years before Columbus, was funded by the Templars. This is yet another segment of world history that is kept under the carpets of the academic world. However, we have ample proof that these Normans traveled both west to make the first discoveries of the so-called New World, and east into the ancient world, pulling together under the dictates of their Gnostic religion and the dictates of the laws of Mithra, the laws of time. They brought back treasure to Europe, much of which has given way to legend and lore, including being buried in sites such as Rennes-le-Château in southern France. While much of this is considered quasi-history, there are historical characters who came out of the same bloodlines of Northern Europe, such as Bernard de Clairvaux, who it is claimed was instrumental in creating the ideal of Christian nobility, known as the Knights Templar. All of this is involved with a single family, a single bloodline, that organized itself into secret societies and maneuvered beneath the surface of the Christian world as a hidden faction. Many of the conflicts that have contributed to a bloodied European history are the result of the hidden struggles between these factions. Remember that Christianity spread throughout Europe thanks in large part to a group which we identify as the Apostles, the disciples of Jesus Christ, particularly Paul and his negotiations with the Roman Emperor Constantine, who took control over the formation of the last phases of Christianity. Not only did Constantine allow Christians to live freely in Europe, he assisted them in building up out of the collapsing structure of the Roman Empire. The Church took over these structures as the monastic system. That is the way Christianity was able to take over and continue the power of Rome in the disguise of the cleric or the priest. Both of these factions, one overtly through the establishment of institutions and philosophies, and one covertly through bloodline, were following the dictates of the Yuga. They used the Yuga dates and Yuga forces to implement their power. Remember, those Yuga forces are the forces of the Kali Yuga, which ultimately lead to disintegration and destruction. The Norman world underwent devastating attacks from the factions that were reformulating the Roman Empire into the Holy Roman Empire with the help of the proliferation of Christianity. During this period, anyone whose philosophies contradicted that of the predominant Christian philosophy was met with strict resistance and, in many cases, genocide. Such was the fate of paganism. However, at that time, several members of the Templars had risen to tremendous power. They used their seafaring instincts from their Norman bloodlines to set up vast networks of trade all around the Mediterranean Sea. With that trade, they were able to amass great fortune in material wealth, which they were then able to loan to various European kings who were suffering financially due to constant wars. The Templars then, with this acquisition of material wealth and power, soon became the target for the Vatican and the Holy Roman Empire, which attempted to wipe out the Templars once and for all. But the Templars' command of the sea continued. Using the maps of the unexplored world handed down through the Norman legacy, which occupied the Mediterranean coastline as well as southern France and Spain at the time, the Templars identified a naval officer by the name of Christopher Columbus. After the Church's attack on the Cathars in southern France, the Templars dispersed. They made settlements in Germany and the Netherlands. One of the great Norman warriors was William the Conqueror, who took the Norman tribes into power in England. But that Norman power became overwhelmed by the gent of Christianity, Oliver Cromwell, Lord Protectorate of the Commonwealth of England, Scotland, and Ireland. There is this constant structure of conflict and bloodshed that is based on this earlier platform of conflict brought against a deeply philosophical tradition that the Roman movement attempted to annihilate in Europe. The Templar philosophy, mentality, and belief was then brought to the United States via the Puritans. And Washington, D.C. became a receptacle for their belief system, with the Founding Fathers carrying out every foundational ceremony of Templar Masonry. America has been constantly subjected to a history that has a substructure that is a continuation of that which began in the Middle East at the time of the advent of the Kali Yuga. Whenever factions come into conflict or duality comes into being, there is an initiatic teaching that sees this division into conflict as a potentiality to enhance and create a hierarchy.